On a chilly morning 4 days before Christmas, the halls of a Lancaster elementary school buzz with holiday excitement. But something is wrong. Sixth grade teacher, 25-year-old Christy Marak, is missing.
Christy was never late for school. I thought, what? You know, it was just so unlike her. So I called her apartment about 5 times. Nothing. I left messages, Christy, where are you? We're worried about you. And that's when I called her mother.
My mom was kind of in a panic saying, you know, Christy didn't show up for work today, which was really odd. We didn't know what to do.
Christy's family lives 2 hours away. Principal Harry Goodman volunteers to check on her himself.
So I pull up to her apartment and her car is iced over. And I knew something was wrong.
Christy was my middle sister. Christy was the kind of person that she always was smiling, always energetic. She was that kind of person also, you know, just kind of try to make everybody laugh.
Okay, this was Christy and I at our senior prom in May of 1985. She was a very kind person. She was the kind of person that would really do anything for you, and I know a lot of people say that, but she truly was.
I ran outside the door and slammed it shut, and I was in shock. I remember I was staggering, going from apartment to apartment, pounding on the door, just screaming. And finally, somebody let me inside, and I called 911.
Within minutes of Harry's frantic 911 call, police and rescue units arrive at Christy's apartment.
When the officers entered, they did see the body of a young woman to their immediate left in the living room. She had some significant facial injuries. There were marks around her neck, so potentially a strangulation was involved. She's nude from the waist down, with the exception of her socks, and her clothing that she had from the waist up were pushed up to her upper chest. Any detective would have a logical conclusion that there's a sexual assault involved here. It was immediately apparent that there was a struggle that ensued right inside the door, as evidenced by the scuff marks both on the floor, on the frame of the door, on the door. The struggle continued into the living room. There was bodily fluid on the carpet, so they cut the carpet out around that stain, and it was eventually sent to the lab for processing and analysis.
Police begin canvassing the neighborhood.
A woman who lived in the same complex said that right around 7:15 that morning, she was walking her dog. She saw a light-colored or a white-colored vehicle parked in the overflow parking lot, which was directly across the street from Christy's townhouse. She saw what she described as a white male with a muscular-type build, stringy dark hair, exit that vehicle and walk into the area of Christy's apartment across the street. As she was observing all this, her roommate came out, and as they were engaging in conversation, they heard this really loud kind of high-pitched scream. They weren't sure if it was Christy or not, but it came from the direction of her apartment. So the detectives developed a sketch of the person that was seen in the area that morning.
Christy usually left for work around 7:30 to 7:45 in the morning. This was a murder that occurred in broad daylight. So this was really a brazen act for somebody to enter into the apartment and leave without being seen. So it was very frustrating for detectives at the time. The community was on edge, and they wanted to know who had committed this heinous act.
As the investigation moved forward, there were at least 500 people interviewed. Detectives, they were interviewing everybody imaginable. The detectives also learned about a couple of Peeping Tom incidents that occurred right there in Christie's townhouse complex. Although the Peeping Tom incidents were reported and they were investigated, that led nowhere because the description given was very general. They were leaving no stone unturned, trying to find information to build on and move forward. Just couldn't do it.
For the next 2 years, few leads developed.
The days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, and months turned into years.
By 1995, there were at least 1,500 people that were interviewed, nearly 60 people that had been cleared as suspects in this case.
And then at this point in time, the case is what investigators would say became cold. I knew that the case could always be solved because of the DNA evidence. And I knew that technology was changing. I knew that just getting the additional resources would be able to help to solve the case.
A second DNA test of the sample from Christie's apartment is submitted, reigniting the case.
I remember seeing these pictures come out, and I, again, had that fresh hope. I had that fresh hope that, wow, this is something even further with technology, and this could be it.
We're hoping that some tips that are going to be generated are going to provide us some useful information in the investigation. Well, that didn't happen.
Things just weren't transpiring the way I thought they were gonna. I gotta admit, like I said, it was deflating.
But we all just persevered, and the goal was to never give up here.
25 years after Christy Marak's murder, there is new hope. Thanks to the genetic genealogy technology used to capture Joseph D'Angelo, the infamous Golden State Killer.
That's when I got started. Thanks to the original crime scene investigators, we had DNA both from Christy herself and from the carpet that was underneath her. We were able to upload that to GEDmatch and then wait for the relatives to appear. I knew that the suspect was going to have some Latin American ancestry, and specifically Puerto Rican, because the snapshot phenotype had also predicted that the suspect was going to have some Latin American ancestry. And so I dug very deep into the local Lancaster newspapers.
Finally, she gets a hit.
There was an article that talked about how he liked to cook Puerto Rican food because his biological father was Puerto Rican. And that was like, hallelujah. That was the moment where I knew that Raymond Rowe was very likely Christy Marak's killer.
Raymond Rowe had been living in the community and had remained in the community the entire time since 1992. He was a DJ at house parties, which ultimately led to him becoming quite successful DJing at local nightclubs. The moniker that he used was DJ Freeze. In later years, he became a wedding DJ that had quite a successful business. We were able to dig deeper into his background and his criminal history, and he did not have any prior felony convictions, which was clear why he had not been in the CODIS database. Raymond Rowe did strongly resemble the profiles, but in order to make an actual arrest, You have to obtain a DNA sample that is going to match the DNA sample that has been entered into the CODIS database.
There was surveillance teams established with the assistance of the Pennsylvania State Police. The Pennsylvania State Police followed Raymond to an event at a local elementary school. At the closing of that event, he left behind a water bottle and a cup containing a piece of chewing gum. They were able to compare it to multiple swabs that were taken from Christie's body at autopsy. So there was no question that Raymond Rowe was responsible for this murder.
Our working theory is that he was potentially obsessed with her and had stalked her and had been the peeping Tom and had watched her and tracked her movements leading up to this crime. But as far as what the exact motive was, is anyone's guess here.
To avoid the death penalty, Raymond Rowe pleads guilty to murder in the first degree, rape, and burglary. He is sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, plus 60 to 120 years.
I think that we definitely were able to get justice for Christy and also for her family. It's reassuring to know that her killer will spend the rest of his life in prison.